Good evening, everyone. I'm Teresa Bingman. It is my honor to facilitate this very important town hall meeting that is hosted by the City of Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County. We all know that gun violence impacts our communities in a vital way each and every day. We also know that gun violence is a significant problem in the United States that affects people from all walks of life. That is why your leaders within your city and within your county are gathered here this evening to hear from you. This is your listening session. Please feel free to participate. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear your ideas and your thoughts. So to kick this meeting off, before you hear from your elected leaders and appointed leaders as well, we would like to share a video with you. Thank you.
Survivors are not only those who witness or are wounded or hurt by gun violence, but survivors are also those who either know or have a loved one who was also either involved in a domestic assault, an unintentional killing, or suicide.
My name is Gwendolyn Lewis, and I am the mother of Shaquita Quan Lewis.
My grandson, Devontae Coleman, was murdered on July 22nd.
My name is Pat Strumsta. I'm a gun violence survivor, and I've been asked to share my story with you. This story is about me and my brother Steve.
She was taken away from me, or taken away from us, on July the 15th of 2019 by the hands of her kid's father with a handgun. On that day, my life stopped.
Devontae was a good person. He didn't deserve to die. I've had more than five people in my immediate family that have been murdered. 5 people. That's not acceptable. We as a community, we are embracing this gun violence. We are incorporating it into our culture. The rappers glorify it. We just need to do better.
Steve's illness was mental illness, and it manifested itself in depression and anxiety. And he took the gun and he shot himself in the head. A violent death. That gunshot not only shattered and killed him, but it shattered the lives of everyone in my family. I can only imagine the despair of the policemen who found him, of those who had to identify him.
They lost their mom, and they all took it in different ways. Some cried, some didn't, some don't even know what's going on. All they know is that mom is gone and she's not coming back. And they still having problems right now today, with anger issues, being depressed. Guns is not the way. And if you do have a gun, please, please lock it up.
I want to pause just for a moment uh, to let some of the profound comments that occurred during that video have a moment to resonate with all of us. We are here together this evening, really beginning a process in a new way, recognizing the profound impact that gun violence is having on our community. And reflective of that profound impact, the Kalamazoo City Commission passed a resolution on September 20th at our business meeting. And in that resolution, we declared gun violence a public health crisis, and we allocated $1 million for ongoing community violence intervention. But I believe that this is just the beginning. One of the things that we noted in our proclamation is that gun violence prevention is more important than ever. And we resolved that the Kalamazoo City Commission and City Administration will establish working relationships like we have with Kalamazoo County to establish and facilitate evidence-based public health response to address the underlying social, economic, and systemic factors that promote gun violence. Unfortunately for our community and everyone who lives here, 2020 was a record year for gun violence in the city of Kalamazoo. But right now, we are attempting to do something that we haven't done before. And that is working very closely with our partners like Kalamazoo County, recognizing that the impact of gun violence does not stop at the edge of the city of Kalamazoo. We are committed to working together with our broader community to develop solutions to address this epidemic together. I appreciate your participation. We are going to do a good job as we can with the input that we can get. So I'm hoping that you will willingly share your thoughts and thinking about how we can be most effective this evening, and continue to share that as we do this work together. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tracy Hall, and I'm the chair of the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners. We are joined together with the city in this historic partnership with the goal of reducing gun violence through intervention and prevention. As you heard the mayor just say, the violence that we have seen doesn't just stop at the city borders. It's across the whole county. The vice chair and I can both attest to hearing our colleague, Commissioner Hepler, who's the chief of Augusta Township, chief of police, talk about the gun violence across the county. There is an urgency in addressing this problem and this issue. It's not just gun violence. There's violence issues across, whether it's domestic violence, gun violence, violent crimes, homicides. A lot of the reason I hear when community members have issues with government is because they don't feel connected. There's a disconnect. We are here tonight because we can't get through this. We can't with prevention and intervention without your voice. So we need to hear from you, especially on this issue, on ways that we can combat this. We need to work with our community partners and our residents, but most importantly, we need your voice. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Patrice Griffin and currently serving as the Vice Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Gun violence is one of the top concerns in our community, and I want to call to your attention some of the other impacts of gun violence that aren't normally highlighted or normally talked about. According to the CDC, gun violence or exposure to gun violence causes physical issues, reproductive issues, mental health issues, so on and so forth. Exposure to violence as a child can create a wide array of issues, everything from alcohol abuse, drug use, and even suicide. As Chair Hall addressed earlier, gun violence affects people of all ages, of all races, and everyone in our county. But disproportionately, it has an impact on Black youth adults, specifically young Black males. Even worse, we're starting to see a trend where more of our teenagers and our youth are being impacted and involved in gun violence. Across the nation, Black people disproportionately make up the majority of those impacted by gun violence. This year alone, we've had more than 70 non-fatal shootings with 18 deaths so far in 2021, including a 9-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a county deputy sheriff. In Kalamazoo County, we recognize the need to provide a positive and safe environment for all of our residents. And this is why we are having this meeting today and one of the many steps to address gun violence and get at those root causes. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tammy Ray, and I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners. This issue is very personal to me and so many others in this community. We have all been impacted by gun violence in some way, which is why we are all here. We need an evidence-based public health response to develop long and short-term goals. While this is a
Mr. City Manager, could you proceed with your remarks, and we will come back to Vice Chair Ray. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jim Ritzma, and I have the honor of serving as the city manager of Kalamazoo. I want to start by thanking our partners at the County Board of Commissioners and administration for their shared commitment to addressing this issue that's impacting our entire community. You've heard a lot about why gun violence is causing a public health crisis in our community, but now I want to shift the conversation to the steps we are taking as a city to address it. The City Commission's resolution allocated $1 million from the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds for community violence intervention. The funds will come from the $38 million we received from the U.S. Department of Treasury to help recover from the effects of the pandemic. This funding is an opportunity to put resources behind an appropriate evidence-based public health response to the impacts of and systemic factors that promote gun violence. Gun violence impacts our entire community, and it is critical that we all work together to develop solutions to address it.
Madam County Administrator, the Vice Chair is trying to reconnect. So if you could go ahead and present your remarks, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Henthorn. I am currently the interim county administrator for Kalamazoo County. The problem of gun violence has been recognized by the city and county public officials, as you have heard from all of us tonight. In coordination with the community, we really need to know how government can be of assistance. That's why we want to hear from you, our community. The city and the county, as you have heard, have each committed $1 million of federal American Rescue Plan funding to ongoing community violence intervention. This funding is expected to be made available through grants to community groups committed to reducing gun violence in Kalamazoo. We look forward to engaging with you this evening and hearing your thoughts on how we can work together to have the greatest impact to reduce gun violence in the community. We genuinely thank you for your participation this evening.
Thank you to the elected and appointed officials for the city of Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County. Certainly, this is a historical meeting that we're privileged to be a part of this evening. Two governmental entities coming together to address a very real and a very serious issue in your community. At this time, I want to see if Vice Chair Ray is available to complete her remarks. Let me see if she is reconnected. If not, we will hear from Vice Chair Ray further in the agenda. As we had stated earlier, this is a listening session. It will be held until 8 p.m. So you will see that we have reserved mostly all of the time to hear from you, Kalamazoo County City and the County of Kalamazoo citizens. So without any further ado, I would like to explain the input process that will take place this evening. We have identified 3 questions that we believe are important to hear from you in relation to gun violence in your community. We will pose those questions and place them on the Zoom screen in a poll format so that you could provide some priorities in terms of your thoughts about important issues that should be paid attention to. We've identified some of those issues based on previous interactions with community members. However, if any of the issues that are listed don't apply to your personal circumstance or don't fit the thoughts and ideas that you have, feel free to type in your response so that we can hear from you. So I would like to start with the first public input question that relates to health inequities and injustices. You heard from the mayor and several other leaders about the resolution that was passed by the city council as well as the Board of Commissioners for Kalamazoo County. That particular resolution is titled, "A Resolution Declaring Gun Violence a Public Health Crisis and Allocating Funding for Ongoing Community Violence Intervention." I would like to share with you an excerpt from the resolution before posting the first input question. And it reads as follows. It is the belief of the Kalamazoo County Commissioners that the issue of gun violence in Kalamazoo County is rooted in racial and health inequities and injustices experienced for generations by people of color. This is the question that we would like to pose. We acknowledge that racism is a driving force of all social determinants of health. What are specific health inequities and injustices that have contributed to gun violence in the city of Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County? We will have the first polling question posted, and after you respond, we would like to engage with you to discuss your responses. The first question is now available for your response. Please pick the top 3 most important issues. We will allow that polling question to stand for a few minutes. So take your time, think about it. And when we are aware that mostly all of the participants, or hopefully all of the participants, have responded, we will start the input process. Let's take another minute and we'll start engaging. Okay, I hope that most of you had an opportunity to respond. If we could show the poll results. You could see the poll results right there in front of us. The majority, 57 out of 76, 75% have indicated income inequality and poverty. 29% inadequate public housing. 47% lack of access to affordable quality healthcare, mental and physical. 54% easy access to firearms. 53% lack of educational, academic support for underperforming youth and adults, and 34% lack of job, self-employment opportunities. Thank you. Thank you for participating. So the way this part of the process will work is that we would like to hear directly from you. So if you are interested in responding to why you chose, can we put the poll up one more time? Let's select the top 3 out of that and start the discussion with the top 3. So the top one is income inequality and poverty. And the next one is access to firearms. And the next one is lack of educational academic support. Okay, so the income inequality and poverty. If there's anyone who'd like to speak to that, please raise your hand and we will promote you to the screen. If you choose to turn on your video, you could do that. If not, we would just like to hear you through the audio. Okay. I'm looking to see if there are raised hands. I do see one raised hand. Scrolling through it.
Richard, please go ahead. You've got the opportunity for comment. Okay. I think we just lost him.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Chamberlain, if you could identify those individuals and promote them, I will start the engagement. And certainly if they have any questions, the panelists are prepared to respond to your questions.
Steve T, go ahead, please. Unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, I actually really weighed in on the top one. I chose 2 other peripheral issues. So I'll speak to the main one, which is the income inequality. And I know that goes for the nation and the state with the industrial base. Not as strong as it used to be. There's a big wage discrepancy. My family moved from South Texas, Middle Texas, North for those good paying jobs. There are no more good paying jobs. I moved here 2008, actually looking for another good paying job I actually used to live in Albion, but the industrial base is the same. What I'm getting at though is that historically, as minorities primarily have come north, and also that's not true. Where I lived before, there were many whites that came from Mississippi, Alabama, and Kentucky to work in the industries. There's a lot of wage discrepancies now. There's a lot of income disparities. And for my purposes tonight, county and the local, because I think the state and federal need to weigh in as well. To me, it starts at home. Are we attracting businesses that are going to be able to provide adequate income for people to feel that they're prosperous? Are there going to be jobs to be able to come for people to save with their money, to put their children through school, to have adequate health care, and those kind of things? The jobs I see being brought to Kalamazoo today are not quite at the level that's going to do that. You're going to have to have 3 full-time working people in a household to be able to provide that. And as a minority person of color, I'm Mexican American, I look around here. I know many people here. At one time, the Hispanic community in Southwest Michigan was tight knit. Like I said, I lived in Albion, but I knew many people here in Kalamazoo because we all came from the same areas in Texas. It's funny how many have turned to crime. Many have turned to violence. And it's, to me, it's partially feeling desperate. We have nothing to claim as our own. No good jobs, educational opportunities aren't there if you can't go to school. So, you know, I can't say that I have many solutions other than the top one. What is the city and county going to do to be able to attract good paying jobs, but also ensuring that those companies that come here are going to provide a safe environment that doesn't pollute our area, the water, the air, and things like that? Because I think that that also leads to the despair. And when you feel you have nothing, you have no respect, or, you know, I grew up differently. I understand that today I'm 59 years old is different than it is today back then. But I was taught to value my community, regardless of what happened. Things have changed. Younger people today don't feel they have a say, and they don't have anything to add to our society. So many of the people I see that are into violence are younger. So we're going to be losing a whole lot of our population that could be future scientists, owners of businesses, either dead or going to jail. So I guess that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Steve, thank you very much for sharing your comments. You raised a number of points, and I know there was a specific question for city and county leaders, which is, what is it that you're going to do to attract and maintain good paying jobs within Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County? So before we have a response from the city and county, I do want to say that we received a message that the individuals who are participating on Facebook are not able to see the questions. So what we will do to make sure that you're informed of the polling results is that we will read the questions a couple of times and we will read the polling results. I apologize for this inconvenience and thank you so much for tuning in via Facebook. So with that being said, are there individuals who would like to respond to what Steve has shared?
This being Mayor David Anderson here. Yeah, I will talk about that a little bit. I do think it's interesting that income was ranked by far and away, you know, the number one issue, because being able to have decent employment or self-employment that provides you the capacity to pay your bills, to take care of your family, I think is foundationally important for any individual and family to have hope and optimism about the trajectory of their lives. So what exactly can the city do? I think at this point, the city is involved in a variety of ways, and I will just hit on a couple of them. One is that we are trying to participate with nonprofit organizations to help people improve their individual skills so they themselves can get a better paying job. That's one thing we're working on. Another thing we're working on is we are attempting to help small entrepreneurs get their businesses started so that they can move on that path of creating family wealth building by being self-employed, helping people who have been doing trade work get their contractor licenses so they can be able to bid on jobs and help those that are self-employed. In addition, and this is not always easy work, but we do work with our state and regional partners as we can to try to attract business to the area. That's obviously got a lot of pieces that are, that can be helpful or not helpful when you're doing that work, but that is another area we attempt to focus in Kalamazoo is what can we do to support our existing businesses and help attract new businesses that provide good paying jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a response from a county leader?
Thank you, Teresa. I'll echo some of the things the mayor has said that they're working on with the city. But in addition, I would like to highlight for myself and many of my colleagues, it starts at home first, meaning it starts with the county and making sure that we are paying our county employees a living wage. So we've embarked upon a wage study to assess wages across the county with the hopes of starting to implement the results of that sometime next year. We'll get the results early spring. If we can't take care of our county employees, how can we make sure that our own residents are lifted up as well? We also one of our number one priorities is housing, and for me, this starts with housing and housing first. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hall. There are a few more hands raised. Mr. Chamberlain?
Yes, let me go ahead and we'll get the next speaker up here. Crystal, will give you an opportunity to speak. Crystal Harris, can you go ahead and unmute yourself? Hi, Crystal, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I think that one of our main problems is the fact that our government gave away a lot of money to young children that weren't ready to receive it. And with that money, they decided to buy a lot of guns and weapons. And since then, we have seen a higher rate of crime with them robbing each other or trying to rob other people because they knew that the same grant was given to other people. And so they wanted to take advantage of it. And so that is one of the main, I think that's some of the reason why we've seen such a major impact in the deaths recently and this year. Also, the lack of education is always going to be there because it's usually people that have a lesser education that are going to be to come up with a plan to take advantage of other people that are out there working or trying their best to support their families. That's all I have.
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Harris. Appreciate those comments. And that is in response to income inequality and poverty being one of the specific health inequities and injustices that have contributed to gun violence. So we will move on to the next response unless there are comments that the city or county officials would like to make. Okay.
We do have one more citizen. I'm sorry, Teresa. We have one more citizen who would like to comment on the question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kelly, go ahead. Kelly, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yep. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, I would like to touch on I can't remember her name, what she just touched on, the easy access to firearms, I believe it was. But so according to the FBI statistics, there's anywhere from 237 to 380,000 stolen firearms in 2018 to 2020. So I would be curious to know in Kalamazoo, what percentage of the firearms used in violent crime are actually bought by law-abiding citizens, or what percentage are actually obtained illegally? I'd also like to touch a little bit on the mental health one too, which I'm surprised it's not higher than what it actually is.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, could we get a response, if there is a response available, regarding the first question that you posed, related to the percentage of firearms that are stolen versus the percentage of firearms that are legally purchased? And actually, that is a response to our second highest response, which is easy access to firearms. So I don't know whether that data is readily available. It looks like Mr. City Councilman Cunningham has his hand raised. So as he's entering the screen, I would ask if all of the panelists, the elected and appointed officials, could turn your videos on so that the public will see that you are ready to engage with them. Thank you so much. Yes, sir, you can go ahead, Councilman Cunningham.
Thank you. To your question, Kelly, and I'm sorry if I'm getting feedback here. I don't have the data readily accessible, and obviously we would have to reach out to our public safety to get that information, but I wanted to provide a point of clarity. I think what Crystal Harris was referencing to was a principle that, you know, individuals get these dollars in their pockets and then they buy it illegally also. And so I think that might be what she's probably referencing to. And also, I just wanted to highlight, she was a victim of gun violence, dealt with closely in her family. And so I appreciate her giving her input, and I stand in complete agreement that there was a large amount of money given to individuals, and it probably could have been done differently and probably separated.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Any other responses to the question that was raised?
Mayor David Anderson here. I'm going to say that I don't have that information, Kelly, related to where guns came from that were used in those particular circumstances, but I know that's something that we can get, but we don't have that answer, I don't think, tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Was there a second part to your question, sir?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments regarding easy access to firearms? Okay. If there are none, we will move on to the third highest level of selection, which is lack of educational/academic support for underperforming youth and adults. Lack of educational, academic support for underperforming youth and adults. Is there any input as to that particular response? Let's hear from you, Kalamazoo County.
We have Crystal has raised her hand, so go ahead.
Thank you,
Crystal.
Mr. Chamberlain. Crystal? Is there anyone else who's raised their hand while Crystal's preparing?
Okay. Steve T, go ahead.
Steve, could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, it took a minute for me to get on here.
All right.
My take on the educational part, you know, I did have the ability to go to school, being that I came from a very dysfunctional household. I did not complete it. And I'm kind of torn on this question. So I don't know if I have any particular questions for any of the panelists, county or otherwise. other than, I personally squandered my opportunity, and I can say that today. So as far as the idea of being able and having the ability to go to school, I wish there were things like the Kalamazoo Promise where I came from when I was younger. I think the opportunity may be there in some form or fashion, more than some people had 25 or 30 years ago. So I am going to take it to my own Latino community and say, if any of them are listening, people, we got to raise our children differently. Um, make them a little more studious, make them a little more disciplined, point them the way. My father was born in Mexico. He barely got his citizenship before he died. So from humble beginnings, picking tomatoes and onions and that kind of thing, I wish that I had many of the opportunities I see some of even my nieces and nephews have today. So that's incumbent upon, I believe, the parents and within our each community to begin to point our own children into the direction of they may not be the easiest opportunities, but they are available. I'm probably going to be ruffling some feathers of my own Latino community, but I'm sorry. I call it like I see it. We have to raise our children better. Gun violence is not the way. There are other, drugs and those kind of things and selling ammunitions. That's what I was wondering myself. How many of the guns seized in Kalamazoo crimes are brought in by people from outside of the community?
That's a good question.
So I will end with that. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much for your input. That's a good question. We do have people listening who are taking note of the questions, and they will be answered. In fact, you will receive contact information at the end of this listening session so that you could send emails, and you could also access a website where we will have questions and answers posted. So thank you so much for your input. I think there are others who would like to speak as it relates to lack of educational and academic support for underperforming youth and adults.
We have a number of people who've raised their hands. So Jennifer, go ahead and ask you to unmute and go ahead. Okay. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, I was a KPS teacher for 20 years, and I definitely see a need for more supports within the schools, after school, during my time teaching. And since leaving teaching, I've had numerous students who have been shot and killed. I have students who are currently in prison for killing other students. I do prison ministry with Forgotten Man Ministry. And even though I'm not able to be in the county jail weekly anymore because of COVID, I do letter writing. One of the people I'm writing to is a former student who is in jail on gun charges. I communicate with some of my former students who are in prison right now, and there's just a common thread with so many of them who didn't graduate from high school, didn't have the educational supports that they needed. So I would love to see some money dedicated to really helping with education, helping to mentor students. Minneapolis years ago came up with a blueprint for youth violence prevention. They had 4 goals. The first goal is to connect every youth to a trusted adult. I think that is so powerful, and as many mentoring programs as we can get would be needed. The youth are struggling right now. I think COVID last year had a huge impact on that, with them being out of school for an entire year. I've heard from so many of my fellow former colleagues who are struggling right now, trying to reestablish school norms after an entire year without it. So many more instances of violence within the schools right now. So, and then that just spills over into the streets. My son attends El Sol. He unfortunately was a witness to the shooting that happened a couple weeks ago outside of El Sol. He's 9 years old. He was incredibly scared when his school went into lockdown. I just kind of worked through some of that with him that night. And the very next night, I was awakened by 4 gunshots right outside my house. And my son woke to all the police searchlights and knocking on the doors. So it's just such a ripple effect that goes all throughout our community, and everyone suffers. But I think if we could really focus some of the resources to helping our youth right now who are really suffering and really traumatized by everything that they've experienced, and they don't have the coping skills that they need to deal with all of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your voice. I know that there are a number of people who would like to speak to this particular item. We have enough time to hear from 2 more individuals. And those of you who don't get an opportunity to speak at this time, please write down your questions and email them to us. We will give you an email address. We want to respond to you. And if we have time at the end of this listening session, we certainly still want to hear from you. Okay? So, Mr. Chamberlain, who's next?
Hey, Artrella, please go ahead. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening. How are you all? So yes, I wanted to respond to this, and I honestly, while I was listening to the previous person, forgot part of the question. So if you wouldn't mind.
Yes. So let me go back to the question. What are specific health inequities and injustices that have contributed to gun violence in the city of Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County? And the one that we're speaking to now is lack of educational and academic support for underperforming youth and adults.
Right. So thank you. That last part is actually what I needed. So the first question that popped into my mind for this one is, why are they underperforming? And I think that's something that we need to focus on. A lot of times we just accept that things are the way they are, and when we disaggregate data, as was mentioned earlier by Vice Mayor, about the race inequities, particularly when we're talking about education. And I've been working alongside a lot of educators in the educational systems for many years. But we sometimes accept things as, oh, they're underperforming. Why are they underperforming? And I think providing supports to school systems and things like that are definitely necessary. We know that particularly our public educational systems do not have nearly as much resources they need in order to meet the needs of the students that they receive. But the other thing that I know to be true is that when we're talking about race inequities in education, and we're looking at a district in this city anyway, and the number of issues of violence, the number of responses to disciplinary actions, disproportionately, we're talking about Black and Brown children. But when we look at the number of educators, they're not predominantly people of color. And so we have to look at the higher educational institutions, the colleges, universities that are teaching and preparing these teachers teaching and preparing these teachers to go into the field of education, particularly in communities that are not communities that they're familiar with, or cultures that they're not familiar with. We need to do a better job on that end, because I feel like that will help us limit the number of underperforming individuals that we have. The other piece of this, real quickly, I know we got to hurry along, but the other piece that I want to make sure I lift up is that oftentimes when we talk about education, especially when youth is in the question, I almost wish this question had parsed out youth and then had the adults separate, because our hearts are going to go, my heart, I can't speak for everybody, my heart's going to go straight to the young people, right? Children are the future and all of that, right? Which is fact. But these efforts around preventing and even some of the healing and interventions that happen as a result of gun violence or after gun violence has taken place in our community really need to be done multi-generationally. They really should not be done in isolation. Some things need to be done in isolation. Sometimes you need to have perhaps an individual therapist, but there are a lot of services where we can really figure out ways to bring grandma, daughter, and child together to heal, to learn, to be educated about all of those things. And I think that's an opportunity for us in this community. I know there are some organizations that already are doing great work around that. But again, with these dollars, they could really do more. And we might be able to also encourage some others to produce some new initiatives that address multi-generational support. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Artrella. Great points. Thank you for sharing your voice. We can hear from one more person before we move on.
Rick, go ahead and unmute yourself, Rick. Hi, Rick, you're with the group. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I've got it now. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to briefly, I know we're busy, got a lot of people that want to talk, but the three things that have been brought up, particularly about the last one, lack of educational academic support. There are a whole group of students that have dropped off the map with the pandemic lockdown and the virtual learning, that schools all over, teachers I know are saying we've lost 30-40% of our students, and we need to focus with some of the money. That's directly what the money should be used for, is to reconnect with people, with young people that have dropped off the educational map and get them reconnected. I think that would be a really important use of the funds, and community and schools could really help a lot in that endeavor. That's what they're trying to do now. The other thing that was said previously, all guns are purchased legally. They start in the pipeline as a legal purchase. And what happens from that point on and how they get involved in crimes or murders or unintentional use, accidental use by youth, that has to do with securing firearms so they're not stolen and securing them when you own them. We have easy access to firearms, and that's the issue. And anything we can do in Kalamazoo to tie those loose ends and find out where they're coming from and how they get involved in crimes would do a lot to help out in one of the three ways to stop gun violence. And the other part of the question that goes back to healthcare and accessibility. I've accessed trauma services in my life as a survivor of gun violence. Some of you know my story. I don't need to repeat it. But there are a lot of people that don't have that access. They don't know where to go. We know who they are. We see them at the scenes of things that happen. And we need to make sure that people know where they can get help, who are the groups that are offering it, kind of a network, a connection line to where people can find help and continue to get trauma services over time. That's really what continues the violence in communities, is that we do not help the people who have been traumatized by previous violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for sharing your story. I know there are others who have comments. Please write those down, email them to us. We will provide an email address. And we also want you to know that your elected and appointed officials want to continue to engage with you beyond this particular listening session. So there will be other opportunities, but we certainly want to hear what's on your mind tonight. So if you don't speak this evening, please write it down and email it to us. We are just very honored to have one of your community leaders in the grassroots effort to speak with us this evening. His name is Mr. Yafencio Harris. I understand in talking with him that his friends call him Big B. So Big B, you're on.
How you doing? Yeah, how you doing? You hear me?
Yes, it's all yours, sir.
Cool, cool. I appreciate the invite, everybody. Yafencio Harris, Big B, for everybody that know me. I I come from the streets, you know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, I wasn't raised to be in the streets. I had a good mom. I'm from Osceola, Arkansas. My mom did all she could to help try to raise me and everything. I still ended up going to prison at a young age. I whooped a teacher in high school over a bag of chips. I had a bad attitude. I grew up in a lot of racism and disconnected communities. I was more welcomed into the streets, mostly because, you know, if you had a flaw, they didn't judge it. They welcomed you in. That's one of the things I be telling like to the city and different programs. Like, we have to be very versatile when we deal with people because everybody different. I did have love from counselors in school and things like that when I got kicked out of school. And I finally sat down and thought to myself, I wasn't really hurt or affected by it because I was only going to school because I was told to, but I was in love with the people I was able to be around during that time of the day. I got some of the best discipline in sports from Coach Gore. You know, there was love around. My mom taught me love in the household, but when I went outside that door, it was a different type of living going on, especially late night. Should I have been out there sometimes? Probably shouldn't, but I was a youngster. So I make mistakes just like everybody else. I'm attracted to what I was attracted to. I went to prison again when I came to Michigan, gun violence. You know, I've been a victim and a suspect several times of gun violence. I've been a victim several times of gun violence. I wish a lot of people was here with me to testify to me, but they gone. A lot of guys still in jail. I can't ask nobody how was work today because I'm trying to make living proof that being successful in the work field is tangible. Like my man spoke on, with more money, you know, that will always help. I have my own obstacles. What made me want to do something different and kind of get on this lane that I'm in right now? One day I was sitting in prison and I just didn't care. I didn't give a damn. I didn't care. And I asked myself, like, man, why you don't care that you even here? Well, you know, I was groomed to lose. I was taught at a young age that I'm going to jail. You know what I'm saying? I got a picture on my hood, in my hood when I was young, 16 people on the porch. Everybody went to the penitentiary except one person, my brother. Whether it was by choice or, you know, whatever happened in your life, you took up for somebody else, you took the charge, you know, whatever happened, we seen prison. Everybody got shot, including my brother. He never went to prison, but he still got a slit down the middle of his stomach from receiving a bullet to his kidney that blew off one of his kidneys. You know what I'm saying? That was when he was 18, I was 17. I thought about it one day and I was like, man, you know, I'm really groomed to lose. Before I learned home ownership, I was taught to survive prison because I knew everybody around me knew this was going. When we went to prison, they threw me a party. When I came home from prison, they threw me another party. Nobody threw parties for college. Nobody was talking about college. We was considered OGs if we made it to 25. Nobody threw parties for, you know, doing good in school. School was down there like a job because you had to survive through so much heartache and headache, you know what I'm saying? But it's different in different areas, different cities, different states. I'm thankful that the people got opportunities that's taking them are receiving and struggling and striving for their challenges to turn into blessings. I'm here to back them up on that. When I finally decided to make my mind up to do something different, this was one of the fields I chose because I felt like it's 31 prisons in Michigan, one for women. For the men, the other 30 overcrowded. Like, I thought, like, why? You know, why we study the recidivism rate is so high, you know? And I started thinking about, you know, reading and doing math. So I got involved, you know what I'm saying? I started finding out things about myself. So when I started falling in love with myself, I found out that I had to turn up a gift of forgiveness. I had to forgive myself first for all this stuff I had did that I had no knowledge of. You can't be what you can't see. So if you ain't educated on it, you probably don't take to it, you know? It's like going to the first day of math class. Oh, I hate it here. You only hate it because it looks foreign. You don't really understand it. But when you finally get that math attitude, you ready. You like, give me the next one. You with your work group, you know, give me the next one. Let's get the next one going on. So, you know, when I started this journey, I started it with a young man who I actually tried to victimize. His friend killed my cousin, so I chased him. I put him on a high-speed chase, broad daylight from the courthouse, trying to kill him. And my cousin was dead, man. You know, his friend killed my cousin. So years later, I met back up with this guy in college, you know, And we just started doing something different. When I linked back up, you know, I just wanted to come at them as a man. On the streets, you talk to come at people with different ways, you know, and it seemed like nobody cares, but somebody really do care. I had instructors in school like Tracy Hall and Sam Bailey and different people who gave me extra attention. I'm thankful for it. You know, I didn't feel like that was the place even for me, but I was so welcome. I made it my business to get up and go. You know, it's still a continuing thing. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm unfinished at it, but I'm striving to it. So the people I'm reaching out to are not just gun violence victims, but trauma. Trauma is not a topic. Nobody's standing on the corner talking about, man, I'm traumatized today. Last week, I was traumatized. Nobody's having a topic about trauma. The uneducated mind does not understand what the educated mind trying to tell them when they talking the lingo that they talking. You know, you're talking from an educated mind and you're talking to an uneducated mind. Not saying they comprehension, not all that. I'm just saying where you at is somewhere they would like to get to, but they don't see it being tangible, being that they have to live the way they live and you at home feeding your dog. You know what I'm saying? And it's not their fault. You know, my mom, we lived in a community where my mom was on Section 8. She didn't get to pick and choose. You know what I'm saying? Where the rainbows don't shine. She had to get what was open and the landlord qualified her for being in there. Now, the lifestyle outside that door, we adopted that and adapted to it because we wanted to survive. Same thing for a lot of our kids around here. You know what I'm saying? It don't look exciting to be at nothing like this. Nothing over here looks exciting to those people. You know what I'm saying? But it look exciting to be out there. All you see on social media, turn it on right now. We probably got good numbers on this social media, but if we was all in a group with AKs and choppers and $100,000 chains on, we'll have even more of a crowd. You know what I'm saying? So you got to look at what's really going on. If you don't evolve, you become extinct. And I don't mean just your life. I mean the testimonies of these people right here. The mayor. That stuff used to be serious when I was younger. If you shook hands with the mayor, you the man, boy. You know what I'm saying? Nobody cares anymore about who's in charge, what politics is doing, because they feel like those things are not there. Those things are not talking about what's real. Me and you, Ms. Bingman, went out and passed out hot dogs and hamburgers and said we fighting gun violence, and we haven't served not one shooter or one person that was a victim of gun violence, but we served 2 old ladies in the hood, and little Joe came down here to get 4 hot dogs for boarding them on the porch. We didn't really go out and do a job now, did we? We just kind of went out with some food and had ourselves a good time on what we felt like was right. Well, guess what? We wrong, because we're not assisting the people that need the assistance, because we haven't came up with a plan. Rule number 1, know who you're dealing with. So people want to attack gun violence. Do you know who you're dealing with? Because if you play chess or anything else, football or anything else, they watch football, you watch videos on your opponent. You check them out. Coach tell you, watch his footwork. Look at him right here. They capitalize on how they can win in the game. So are we really capitalizing? Are we really coming at this thing full throttle? Because if we don't, guess what? We're going to be in 6, 7, 8, 9 more meetings just like this, trying to figure out what the situation is. We got some smart individuals around us. We got a helpful handful of individuals willing to give in and kick in. We all got a story. We all got something positive to share and bring to the table. We see where it's needed at. Let's go get what's needed. If y'all want to spend some money, spend some money. Come and tell you something. I do look good when I come out in my all-white Nikes, but I look better in my $730 Gucci shoes. So don't bring me no all-white Nikes. Go out there and spend that $730 because you're dealing with diversity here. You're not dealing with one culture. You're dealing with several cultures, and they all require different attention, and that's going to cost you. It's really going to cost you, but is it worth saving a life? Yes. So let's save a life. We need more education. Let's put it into education. We need something for them to do. Let's find out what they like to do. Let's give it to them. Have we tried that? You know what I'm saying? I see a lot of new things getting put up around the city. How much of that is for the people that really need something? Not the free lunches and, you know, the things like that. They appreciate that. But sometimes you're bringing cake to a person that needs socks. And sometimes you're bringing socks to a person that needs cake. Everybody different. You know what I'm saying? So let's try different things, you know, and let's maneuver around outside the box of what the norm is. You know what I'm saying? Because some of these people are affected in different ways. Cuz got shot, but it affected his other little cousin. Now he's so mad, he won't put the gun down. Liquor sales went up 150% when they get out stimulus checks. People was catering to their pain. They catering to their pain, and that's the way out. You know what I'm saying? So if we want to cater to their pain, let's find something else to give them. But we have to make it look exciting. We have to make it look good. And if you got to dress it up to get me over there, then guess what? I came over there and now you got my attention. So what you gonna do with me? Because I showed up, and that's the number one thing to do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in on it. I'm a connections coordinator at Urban Alliance for everybody that know. Just the other day, you know, I just housed the guy. I helped house the guy. This guy was a driver in the car that shot at me years ago. He was the driver. You know what I'm saying? Little brother hanging out the window, busting at me. I just helped house him. He got custody of his kids. He just got out of prison from doing 7 years. Like, I got the touch. I get it. And now I'm willing to pull that over on other people and hopefully that they can get it. But I'm willing to take my time. I'm willing to welcome them in, victim and suspect. You know, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to promote no negativity. I want everybody. I don't care, you know, what your agenda is. I don't care what your ideas are, your thoughts are. If you're in trouble and you need some help and you need somebody to talk to, you need somewhere to go, come see me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm going to do what I can. And if I can't do it, guess what? I want to connect them to somebody that can. You know, I'm not here to take no credit for nothing. I'm not here to put me on top and put somebody else as the underdog. No, I'm here. No one man is greater than this team. I'm here to work with the whole city. That's the team. So let's play hard.
That's what I'm talking about, Mr. Harris. Thank you for being real. We titled your section Interventions and Hope. And that's what you delivered. And that's what you deliver every day.
Yes, ma'am.
So we really appreciate you being here, for sharing your story, sharing the stories of others. And we're glad that you're in.
Yes,
you said you're in for the whole city of
I'm
Kalamazoo,
in for the
right?
whole city. Everybody.
How about the whole county, sir?
Come on in,
county.
There you go. Make me whole.
We've got you. So thank you so much. This is a really good transition to the next public input piece as we talk about policies and practices. Policies and practices. As Mr. Harris said, you know, if you're going to spend some money in the right places for the people who need it. So we want to hear from you, Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County, as it relates to policies and practices. So we will have the same process that we utilize for this second question. And I want to first share just a little information with you. You probably know that public health is the science of reducing and preventing injury, disease, and death, and promoting the health and well-being of populations through the use of data, research, and effective policies and practices. I wanted to define that, what public health is, because the next question relates to public health. I want to read to you an excerpt from the resolution that brought us here today, the city and county resolution. And a portion of it reads as follows. Gun violence is a leading cause of premature death in the United States. More than 38,000 people are killed and nearly 85,000 people are injured by guns each year. As a longtime advocate for violence prevention policies, the American Public Health Association recognizes a comprehensive public health approach to addressing this growing crisis is necessary. So here's our question that we're going to poll for this section. The question follows: what policies and practices do you believe would make a public health approach in this community successful? We want you to pick the top 3 most important issues. The polling questions will soon populate. The question is, what policies and practices do you believe would make a public health approach in this community successful? You see your choices there. Please pick the top 3 most important issues. We'll give you some time to do that. And for those individuals who are with us on Facebook, I will read the choices. 1 is counseling and education, which includes safe firearm storage campaigns, firearm training courses. The next one is clinical intervention, including personal safety counseling and intervention programs. The third one is government interventions, including background checks, firearm licensing, change firearm policies that contribute to gun violence, such as the Stand Your Ground laws. And the final one is address socioeconomic factors. That would include inequities and structural racism, fund social services adequately, which it would include food, mental and physical health, education, housing for low income, and job training. So the four choices are counseling and education, clinical interventions, government interventions, and address socioeconomic factors. We'll give everyone a few minutes to take a close look at that and think about their choices and prepare to provide some input once we see what the top choice is. Okay, as you're preparing to finish your polling, I just want to add, if we could put the polling questions back up again, I just want to add a little more context to a few of the choices there. Are the polling questions back up? Maybe I can't see them from my end. Okay, I have them now. So on the first one, the counseling and education, we want to add to that the conflict resolution, just to clarify. Education and conflict resolution. The third one, the policy interventions would be the government interventions would consist of policy interventions. And then the last one, social and emotional learning is part of the socioeconomic factors. So you've probably already made your choices, but we wanted to add that additional context. Are we ready to reveal the poll results? Okay, here we go. The top one would be the socioeconomic factors. The second one would be the clinical interventions. And the next top one would be the policy or government interventions. Okay, so for those individuals on Facebook, the top one is address socioeconomic factors. The next one would be policy and governmental interventions. And the next one, the next one would be clinical interventions such as counseling. And the one after that would be the governmental and policy interventions. So we will take a poll on those, but before we do so, we want to share some input that we received from the youth. We heard Mr. Harris talk about the fact that the interventions should be relevant to those individuals who are targeted. And he also mentioned that the youth are a major audience for this type of interaction. So we had a conversation with the youth at the Kalamazoo County Youth Home, and Vice Chair Tammy Ray is the person who engaged the youth and asked them for their input so that she could share it with all of you tonight. So we're very pleased that we had that information for you. If we could put the slides up, we want the audience to hear from the youth, and maybe this will inform some of your responses as we discuss what's on the minds of the youth. So the input includes Boys and Girls Club and community centers on all sides of town, after school programs, homework help, tutoring, computer classes, help youth with earning credit for GED and HSD, to have fun, age-appropriate after-school activities such as basketball, baseball, football, tennis, and ping pong, provide swimming lessons, chess club, video gaming tournaments, daycare centers, parenting classes, movie nights, and make school more interesting. Update the library books, provide a life skill class to learn about credit, banking, budgeting, and housing. Very interesting, very basic. These young people need us to listen to them, and they had more to share. Provide trade schools, job training, assistance with writing resumes, cover letters, and thank you letters. Improve city and county parks with age-appropriate equipment, basketball courts, football fields, and tennis courts. Provide a boxing academy and swimming pools. Make sure that they have access to youth counseling services that specialize in gun violence and childhood trauma. Mr. Harris, we're hearing that word trauma. Like you said, they may not be on the street corner talking about trauma, but we know that's part of the experience of some of the youth. And then finally, driver training classes, CPR, first aid, and safety. So that's the input that was received from the youth who are housed at the Kalamazoo County Juvenile Home. And we will post this information on the website that we'll share with you at the end of this meeting. So with that being said, let's move on to the discussion. And we will start with the top choice, which is address socioeconomic factors. So who would like to speak to that from our audience? Mr. Chamberlain?
Go ahead, Jill. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Jill Reynolds, and I'm a retired school nurse. I retired from Kalamazoo Public Schools. I've had contact with Tracy Hall, hi Tracy, and various people in the community. I wanted to say, because I haven't heard any discussion on this, did you know that there is no requirement for school nurses in Michigan? You do not have to have one. And when I retired in 2015, I admit I'm old and I may be a little out of date, but there was no requirement. And In this county, Kalamazoo Public Schools had 2 full-time school nurses paid for out of hard money. Bless their hearts. You got to give them credit. And Gull Lake Schools had 1 nurse that kept disappearing according to the budget, which left at that time 75% of the schools had no access to a full-time school nurse. So you're telling kids right out of the box that come to school who need insulin during school to participate and need EpiPens. They have asthma. They have, not to mention that at the time when we did a poll, they said to me, Jill, what do you think is the biggest problem that you see in kids at school? And I said, loss, which is a mental health issue. Loss, which leads to behaviors that are horrible for the child and for everybody around the child. So what I'm suggesting to you, because I haven't heard one word about this, and when the Flint crisis was going on, with the water, Rachel Maddow had somebody on TV and she said, well, what do your school nurses say? And they go, we don't have any. And she was like, you should have seen her face. She was like, are you kidding? So I just wanted to at least share that because I've heard no mention of it. And even though I'm retired, I still care. And those of you who might know who I am, I still want to be available to help. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Any response to Ms. Reynolds' statement? Why are there not nurses in schools? Why are there no nurses in schools in Michigan? What's up with that? Chair Hall?
So, I definitely echo Jill's comments. In addition, we don't have enough counselors either. And when we talk about education and supporting young people, we need teachers to have support. And with that is having counselors. There's some ridiculous number of how many counselors we are actually short throughout the state of Michigan. So we actually need to be intentional and almost need a whole, to reform the whole system. And it has to start with the state. So I hope that our state leaders are tuning in and what they can bring back to the state legislature, because we need support in our public in our schools. My girls agree, so I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, Chair Hall.
Ms. Bingman, David Anderson here. Just one comment on that. Obviously, a very, very important comment. But one thing I want to make sure is that just for clarity, that neither the county commission nor the city commission, establishes the budgets for the schools or run the schools here locally. So those are all the local school boards that make those budget decisions. So I would suggest that, like Chair Hall mentioned, some of that may be an issue related to, is there sufficient state funding going to school districts? And another discussion could be, is it important that the county or the city become involved in some new way that hasn't occurred before? Because we tend to be siloed with our budgets in our organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for that comment. Okay, are there others who would like to provide input?
We do have other folks with their hands up. So we have a representative from Isaac. So
Teresa, before we move there, Commissioner Cunningham has his hand up.
Yes, Commissioner Cunningham, thank you.
I wanted to make it just a point of thought. I know that an opportunity is presenting itself, and I want to put some energy behind it since we're briefly kind of talking about it. City Manager Risma mentioned to me the other day that he had conversations with Kalamazoo Public Schools about after-school programming. And so I think that there's some opportunity there that a lot of us can vocalize, and I stand in agreement. When we talk about health, it's a simple ask to have nurses readily available. But
thank you very much. So the representative from Isaac is joining us, and we want to say thank you very much to the Isaac organization for contributing to the opening video and allowing the audience to hear the stories from some of the victims of gun violence. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes. Okay, thank you, thank you. My name is Charlotte Davis. I am a resident of Kalamazoo County District 4. I'm the executive director of Isaac, where we have a gun violence prevention task force. And I'm also a board member and community working team member for the group violence intervention strategy. I want to first thank you all for acknowledging that racism is ingrained in all of these societal inequities. We are a city, and I love our city, but we are a city and county, I should say, with polarizing wealth and also disparities. And we can't close our eyes to that. And I'm glad we're not closing our eyes to that. And we have to ask ourselves and tell ourselves that we're going beneath the surface for the why. So I chose as the first answer, it was addressing socioeconomic factors. And I just want to lift whether we're talking about social services or housing, mental health, health in general, that we need to do everything in an equitable way, in an anti-racist way, and in a way where no unintentional harm is done. So again, that goes back to knowing that racism and inequities are at the center and it's threaded in all of these inequities, talking about ongoing services, talking about new initiatives, being culturally competent in everything that we do. And in doing that, we will be able to see the changes that we often talk about. So we're talking about rooted change. And that also means having the right folks, those who are impacted at the table from start to finish and beyond. I wanted to say this as well. In thinking about gun violence prevention, it is the whole person. So this whole socioeconomic factor, this whole person. Housing, mental health, physical health, jobs, employment, schooling, they are all intertwined. They're intertwined, and that is how we have to address them. We really cannot address them one by one. They are intertwined, and it needs to be a multi-level approach that we're looking into. And I wanted to say as well, just one more thing here, as we are talking about, so that's policy, as we're talking about practices, I would really like us as a Kalamazoo City and County community to really include and maybe have a discussion soon about how we can have a shared understanding and language around what it means for gun violence to be a public health concern, because we have been saying that it is true, it is key, we need to move in that vein. But we do need a shared language and an understanding, and also of how systemic racism and trauma impacts this violence as well. That will help inform our journey. And that's for all of us. I'm putting myself in it as well, who are involved. Some of us have knowledge, a little knowledge, some don't, but the learning is ongoing, myself included. The starting point is education and awareness, and then ongoing work. So that's community members, city, county level, ongoing work for law enforcement, for agencies, community organizations, large and small, our elected officials, our city and county officials, so that we are on the same page when we are saying we are moving towards looking at this health as a public health concern. And some are already doing this in the community and the work that we're doing. Some are just coming to the table, and those who are already pushing that work can also help lead that work. And the last thing that I want to say is that if we can be informed as to what that really means and how that is really connected to violence, to gun violence, to community violence, then that will impact our actions and how we address, and that will impact our outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that input. We are getting close to our end time, and we certainly want to respect everyone's voices as well as your time. So this is the plan for the remainder of our meeting. The top three in this category included the address socioeconomic factors, clinical interventions, and policy interventions. After we have this discussion, we want to talk with you about prioritizing how you believe money should be spent. So we want to save enough time for that. So with that being said, if we could hear from the Kalamazoo County Health Officer, Mr. Jim Rutherford, we would like to hear from him. And then we would like to move to the question regarding how to spend the resources based on your ideas and comments. Again, we will urge you to write your questions down, please. We will provide an email address to you. If you could email those questions to you, we will answer them. And we will also have other opportunities to engage with you in listening sessions and focus groups. So with that being said, Mr. Rutherford?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
I apologize that I haven't been involved with this as closely as I would have liked to. Obviously, we've got a lot of things on our plate in public health, and certainly this is an important element that we want to take on or help to be a partner within. I really want to comment on the comments made from the school nurse and really echo the sentiment that it's not a local problem that's just familiar to Kalamazoo County as it relates to school nursing. And, we've had these conversations in the past. Michigan is dead last as it relates to the number of school nurses per capita for students. And that's really an important element to really take into consideration when we look at many of the kids, particularly in our schools, such as Kalamazoo Public Schools. The only access that many of them will have for healthcare, unfortunately, is a school nurse, and that's a sad reality that we have to address on a regular basis throughout the country. School nursing, and I started in Kalamazoo County as a deputy health officer. And I went to Calhoun County as a health officer probably, 12, 13 years ago. And we built a fairly significant school nurse program. And, my intent is to really start having conversations, continue having conversations with school superintendents, with administration, with the city of Kalamazoo. School nursing is a very effective program. There's opportunities to tie school nursing in with school-based health centers. Prior to my coming here, we had a school-based health center, and unfortunately that went away. But really, that's post-pandemic, that's one of the areas that we'd really like to focus on in Kalamazoo County is what we're doing in relationship to our schools. The fact that I've only got 2 or 3 school nurses in Kalamazoo County has been very problematic. Throughout the COVID pandemic, how much more beneficial that would have been throughout the entire process of COVID response within our schools had we had established school nurses. The gold standard for states that do this well is 1 school nurse for every, I believe, 700 to 800 students. Sadly, if you do the math in Kalamazoo County, we are very, very, very far behind and below that. And we're not any different than most communities in the state of Michigan. Unfortunately, we just don't invest in school nursing. And it's really I think a profession that lends itself to a lot of really phenomenal things. And if we do it the right way, I think it can really lend to improving the lives of the students within our K through 12 system. So I don't want to belabor the topic, but I did want to add that on as something that we'd like to continue to have conversations about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rutherford. So we're going to move on to our last polling question. I know a number of you have your hands up. If you've not yet had an opportunity to speak, we're trying to make sure that those individuals who have not yet spoken will get that opportunity this evening. So here's the last polling question, everyone. The federal government has identified several categories of community violence prevention activities that are eligible for stimulus funds. To which categories listed below should funds be allocated? This is talking about spending the money. So please pick the top 3 most important categories. So those of you who are on Facebook, the choices include community violence intervention programs, such as street outreach, wraparound services training, community planning and safety plans, improving neighborhood infrastructure. Next, mental health and substance abuse services, crisis support, recovery support, school-based social emotional support. Next, assisting neighborhoods negatively impacted by the pandemic, support for victims of crime, housing assistance, food assistance, and job training. Next, assisting unemployed workers, youth employment, paid training, workforce readiness, employee wraparound services. And finally, addressing the pandemic's impacts on education and childhood health by offering summer education and enrichment programs to address learning loss, foster youth home visiting programs, and summer camp recreation. Again, the choices are community violence intervention programs, mental health and substance use services, assisting households negatively impacted by the pandemic, assisting unemployed workers, and addressing pandemic's impacts of education and childhood health. We might be ready for the results. Let's see what we have here for this last question. What are the top three? Here we go. So it looks like 67% for mental health and substance use services. Before that even is 84%. Sorry, I missed that. Community violence intervention programs is number one. Community violence intervention programs. Next would be the mental health and substance use services. And after that would be addressing pandemic's impacts of education and childhood health. Okay, so we have our top three. So anyone who wants to speak to any of the top three, we'd love to hear from you. I know there have been a couple of hands that have been raised for a while. So Mr. Chamberlain, who do we have here?
Okay, Stephanie Williams, go ahead, please.
Hello, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello. Hi, how are you all? I'm trying to figure out where you at. Okay, I'm sorry, my apologies. So I wanted to speak directly to the issue of disseminating the funds. My recommendation would be that these funds are used to truly fund an office of diversity, equity, and inclusion in both the county, the city, and the courts. Even though the courts fall under county, they're really a separate standalone. And so when I say fully fund an office, with having staff as managers, directors, not coordinators buried under levels of administration, but having the autonomy to really do internal research on policies and practices and come back and make recommendations to the county and city leadership regarding policy change as well as budget recommendations. I think that these departments have to be fully funded. They have to be standalone so that the folks can have the autonomy, and included in that department should also be a director of health equity. So you're looking at the policies and practices, but you're also keeping a specific eye on health, which is directly related to some of these outcomes of social problems that we're dealing with. I also recommend that funding goes to support whatever effort it needs to strengthen the current Public Safety Review Board, that it is also a standalone department empowered with having the tools and resources and funding to allow it to investigate, make recommendations, and those recommendations be enacted on. Additionally, I would like to suggest that funds go to community-based organizations, whether regardless if they're nonprofits, entrepreneurs, or businesses, who have a proven track record of relationships within the community that is most adversely impacted, that they have a track record of true community engagement, and that they have diversity, equity, and inclusion embedded all through their organization in terms of their leadership, their policies, and the folks that are said to be working on the ground are trained and trauma-informed, as well as equity and social justice issues. I also think, lastly, that the funds have to go to individuals in the community who are mostly impacted. We want people to save the world that can barely pay their rent, keep their utilities on, and pay for childcare for their children. We have to figure out how we can get the Alice's of Kalamazoo County to a living wage or supplement their income so that they can sustain themselves and their families, so that they can become healed when they go through counseling, coaching, substance abuse recovery, treatment, peer-to-peer support, and then will turn around and do that same thing for their family and their communities in terms of healing, empowerment, and engaging people in the overall work. It has to start from within with changing the structure, the governance, and the implementation from the city, county, and the courts, as well as how it transfers to the community. We have to stop asking the community to do things that we don't know can be done, because the average person doesn't even understand how city, county, and courts are structured, how they work, what you can and what you cannot do. But we have to transfer the resources for them to be empowered to heal, to transfer that healing, to become knowledgeable, and to sustain their current living so that they can have the best quality of living that they possibly can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Always great to hear from you. Mr. Chamberlain, who's next?
Okay, Wendy. Wendy, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
My name is Wendy Floren. I'm a resident of the Millwood neighborhood, and I'm also a member of the Group Violence Intervention Board and Community Group, as well as the Isaac Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. I'm calling tonight to give input on how the very generous $2 million could be spent to reduce gun violence in our community. First, I'd like to thank all of you for assuring that this money was earmarked to benefit the work that is being done with regard to violence. It is sorely needed. Whether we want to admit it or not, our systems are full of explicit and implicit racism and bias. Culturally competent anti-racism training and education must be a thread woven throughout all of this work. The work that needs to come should be very comprehensive in scope. Many in our community are suffering from generational trauma that has not been addressed. More mental health services need to be offered, and more people of color should be encouraged to become therapists. With Kalamazoo College and Western Michigan University both being positioned in this county, I would think that there could be collaborations that could be formed to recruit more minority students in this area and offering more culturally competent classes so these students will be well taught and trauma informed. Also, programming should be offered that promotes resilience and well-being to the community. Money should also go to build up capacity of current strategies, such as group violence intervention. We need more violence interrupters and more structure for these strategies to sustain their work and continue to build relationships with men and women who have lost their way and want to make changes in their lives. There should also be research into best practices in other communities that have programming in which our health system are included and prepared to handle gun violence with a public health approach. Investment in economic developments in all areas of this county is a must. We need to provide more employment opportunities and prepare people from our most violent neighborhoods with job training and education to prepare them for the labor force. This would also include our returning citizens. Another area that needs to be bolstered with funding is community and neighborhood safety. Children and parents should not feel afraid to play outside their homes or in our local parks. Kalamazoo should implement comprehensive community safety plans that include restoring vacant land and reducing the alcohol outlet density in the area. These plans must also include prevention and intervention. Kalamazoo County is a special place, and we need to make it better and safer for everyone. Some strategies will be new, some will be built upon, but all can make a difference to those who are experiencing violence in their neighborhoods. We can begin to unravel the tightrope that is racism that continues to plague our community and our nation. We can be trailblazers in this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Wendy. You have shared a lot of profound thoughts, and I heard some common themes that we have discussed this evening. We thank you for your input. Mr. Chamberlain, who's next?
Okay, Gwendolyn, go ahead.
Welcome, Gwendolyn. Ms. Hooker?
Good evening, everyone. Hello, and thank you so much. I'm looking, okay.
Gwendolyn, go ahead.
Are you all able to hear me okay now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm so grateful that the city and county have kind of banded together for this opportunity for folks to have a conversation. We know that we are being plagued by a major situation of public health crisis of gun violence. I've been actually on the line trying to get on here, and I have many things that I would want to say, but I'm gonna just stick to what really is my passion, I think, in regards to the gun violence, and where I think that some of the money should really be allocated to looking at the bullying. We know that youth, when they are impacted by bullying, that just stems from all kinds of other situations that can occur. And I think if we invested more in our youth, our early intervention, early education at a younger age, and start educating the youth about bullying and really conflict resolution skills, problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, with a trauma-informed lens, we would have better outcomes as these children begin to go into middle school and high school and start interacting with different people that may not necessarily come from the same socioeconomic backgrounds that they do. I think that when we're talking about gun violence, so many of the people that I work with have been impacted themselves. And so you're talking about trauma, generational trauma that's just passed down from generation to generation. And we have to interrupt that trauma by providing skills of resilience, by providing trauma-informed care that's delivered by people that look like them, that can relate to them, that understand some of the things that they deal with every day. So folks that are Black and Brown, dealing with Black and Brown youth, is going to be pivotal in making decisions and determinations when youth start coming across things that they deal with every day. I try to implement and stress the importance of really intervening with youth at the most earliest age possible, just because we realize that their minds are still forming, and we have a better opportunity to instill in them some critical thinking and problem solving skills at an earlier age. And also start looking at folks that are returning from incarceration and making sure that they are ready to be reintegrated in society with the skills to be able to perform in a way that they can start their own businesses, that they have equitable wages, that they are able to be cultivated to start their own businesses and have affordable housing to live. So those are the things that I've been wanting to say, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity that I have been allotted. Thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure to see you, Teresa.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hooker. Thank you for sharing those ideas with us. We are getting very close to 8 o'clock. And again, we know that some of you have some comments that you would like to provide. Please write those down and share them with us. And you will receive that information here shortly regarding where to send your comments. And you can even call. If you don't want to send an email, you can call and provide your comments. So at this time, we will have a wrap up and some information regarding where we go from here from Mrs. Laura Lamb, who is the Deputy City Manager for the City of Kalamazoo.
Thank you,
Laura?
Teresa. Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone tonight for participating. It's a good problem to have that we didn't have a chance to talk to everybody to the depth we wanted to have, because it means we need to have more conversations. I think that comes as no surprise. We know how passionate our community is and how ready they are to bring everything we have to deal with this very serious issue. As far as next steps go, we want to continue the listening. We want to continue both in terms of formats like this. We'd love your feedback to see if this works. Would also like to look for opportunities to do focus groups, some smaller conversations where we can dig a little bit deeper and do some more listening. The intent to this listening is really to gather this information and figure out, how do we take lived experiences, people that are doing the work on the ground, how do we take this information to best guide how these $2 million of stimulus funds should flow. We want to make sure, we want to make sure that we understand the work that's already happening. We want to understand the most critical actions we need to take right away. And we also want to be poised and ready to think about what are those longer term solutions that we need to start now researching, testing, and exploring for us to really get into. We're in the process of talking with our partners at United Way and the Kalamazoo Community Foundation to see how we might partner on a possible joint application process. Right now, the city of Kalamazoo is partnering with United Way on a stimulus funding application process. We're hoping to model that as much as possible. Our goal would be to try to take all this input, do some deep listening into a process, and we would hope to move as quickly as possible, but look to be the beginning of the year where we'd have applications hopefully out the door. Certainly what we've done on the city side is spend a lot of time educating people on the funding opportunity, providing ample technical assistance to make sure people understand the opportunity and have the ability to jump in and access it and have additional conversations. So we're going to be working through that as much as possible. If we go to the next slide, do want to bring your attention to a web page that we've set up where we're going to try to really kind of consolidate the information, accessing this meeting, accessing the resolutions, accessing future opportunities for conversation. So wanting to keep you kind of grounded in that. And then in that website, you can also get to an email address, hello@kalamazoocity.org, where we are encouraging people to contact us with questions, with comments, with ideas. Because this is a joint effort, it's a City of Kalamazoo email address. We want everybody, city and county, to funnel in this way. And obviously, we're going to continue to work very closely with our county partners on next steps. And with that, if there's nothing else for anyone else to add, I just want to thank everybody again for their time and know that we'll be in touch for additional opportunities for listening.
Thank you, Laura. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Please remain engaged.